Meeple Nation Podcast, episode 431. There has been murder in these games.
Welcome, citizens of Meeple Nation. For the next 30 minutes, sit back and enjoy.
Meeple Nation Podcast is sponsored by GameToppersLLC.com. If you haven't seen the products at GameToppersLLC.com, you know nothing. You need to go and check them out. You need to go to GameToppersLLC.com and look at all the amazing things that you can get to enhance your gaming experience. We just had a barbecue. We were over at Andy's house, and Andy laid out a little cover over top of his Game Topper, and it was this huge surface that we were all able to sit around and eat at and chat while we were eating. And then as soon as we were done, he removed that cover, and games were being played. What's even cooler, if you go to GameToppersLLC.com, is they actually have dining leaves that you can get that are meant for that very purpose. You can keep your game set up so that when you do eat, you just put those leaves in place over top of the game, have your fun, have your meal, break it down, and then have your real fun.
So it becomes basically like a Russian doll, right? You remove the game topper to get to the game, to get to the table.
Sure.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Talking about Andy's house, Andy has that lava mat from the 3.0 Kickstarter. That's one that I need to add. Lava mat was very vibrant. The colors,
It was lit.
It was lit. Yes, I see what you did there. Welcome back, by the way, Logan.
Yeah, did you guys hear that? Logan is here.
The contrast between the lava and the black, vibrant.
It's one of my favorite mats. Awesome thing about the mats that Game Toppers has, they clean up really nicely too. So if you do have a spill or let's just say that you have your Game Topper set up in your living room and your son throws up all over the place, happened this week, it actually cleans up pretty nice. You actually can get some soap on there and clean it, and they clean up nicely. Not only are they gorgeous to look at, if something does happen, they actually clean up quite nicely.
Spilled orange soda on it, and that cleaned up with no issues.
It sounds like you guys need to learn to respect the game and the game table.
I need to teach my children. Maybe not sit in that room while they're exercised a little too much after eating too much food.
Yeah, I was going to say, we normally say, like, no food on the Watson. Maybe there should be no vomiting on the Watson.
Maybe
that
so.
wasn't a rule before.
Yeah.
Anyhow, GameToppersLLC.com. Check them out. You will be happy.
We are your hosts of Meeple Nation. I'm Logan Howard.
I am Andy Holiday.
I'm Nathan Howard.
And I'm Dave Holiday.
It is a long foretold return of me.
Welcome
Bask
back.
in my glory. If you can tell, I say lit now, so there's that. I've learned that in my journeys abroad.
Your journeys abroad included Arizona.
Yes,
So
yes.
I don't know if that's very far abroad. I guess it's out of the valley, so yeah.
When you work night, things are different, so you appreciate just references to the sun.
I get that too. We are glad to have you back, Logan. Been a while. It feels like it's been forever, actually.
Your sense of time gets weird when you work nights. Going to work one day and coming home the next, like I have no idea what day of the week it is. It's going to be sad going back to night schedule this week. I had a vacation from that for a couple weeks.
Glad we got to squeeze in an episode or two before you went back.
You want to know not about my trip, but know more about us. We have blogs on our website. If you want to know about our bios, we have links to all of our episodes. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, email us at meeplenation@gmail.com and check out our Patreon. We always appreciate support, what we do, because we love doing it, but any extra love and support we can get from our listeners, we thoroughly enjoy that.
We're always very grateful for that.
This week we are discussing games that are based on murder. That includes solving murders or something that has to do with murder.
So this is a little bit different than a while back we talked about mystery games. Not necessarily a crime. This is where there's actual loss of life has happened. And so you're either solving the crime, trying to get away with the crime. We've talked about some of these games in the past. Touch on these again. One of our games that Logan and I tend to talk about quite often is Werewolf, an experience game. And I call it an experience game because, for me anyways, it's all about the experience of who you play with, entertainment value that you get from those stories and from the situations and the deflection of accusations and the deflection of guilt and just how that all unfolds. And it usually unfolds very differently each game. Rules have changed. People's perspectives have changed. because of their roles. Makes the game, for me anyways, a very unique experience when we play. And I love it when we play it at SaltCon with our large groups, like Dave Brimmer.
One of the more memorable experiences I have is actually a smaller werewolf that we were playing. We were doing Werewolf Legacy. I can't remember why. It was some sort of vampire thing, but nobody could talk. So in the game, there's the role, I think it's called the Spellcaster. Choose one person a day that can't talk. For whatever reason, the entire village couldn't talk, and still, in our allotted time, supposed to nominate somebody, have them defend themselves, and then decide whether or not to lynch them to try and find the werewolves or the vampires. But you literally could not talk. And I remember looking over at Linda, one of our friends from Hug. She was mouthing something, and holy crap, I'm really good at lip reading. I understood everything she said. It was the weirdest realization that we can communicate without making the sound to each other just by reading lips.
Maybe you're not super good at lip reading. Maybe Linda is just really mouthy. Is that the word that I...
That was not lit.
Linda, I don't think you're mouthy.
No, Dave might have a point.
Events like that would never have happened in real life. We wouldn't have been sitting across from each other, staring at each other, talking without using our voices anyway.
It's IRL.
In real life?
Right.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
I thought you were going to maintain...
I thought you were lit.
I thought you were truly lit.
I have the urban word of the day to keep up with the young kids at work, but it only works some of the time.
10% of the time, it works 100% of the time.
Correct. Murder in games. It's fun. See that transition? Smooth as butter.
Smooth as butter. Really cold butter, but yes, sure.
No, it was like butter on an Arizona sidewalk.
I got nothing after that.
Puddle of butter.
Werewolf has come in many different forms.
For sure. Originally started for me a 13-card deck that you could play up to 13 people. The werewolves, the villagers, the hunter, the seer, and the witch, the bodyguard, maybe one or two other roles that were in there, but very basic. Whereas opposed to Ultimate Werewolf now that has 68 roles. Latest version, the Ultimate Werewolf Extreme, expands out a little bit and gives you some props. Because each variant of the game has evolved. The Legacy version that you talked about, Logan, was a ton of fun for me. It's the same basic game, right? But it's limited to 16 people, I believe. We tried to do that with the same 16 people. Brent ran that for us several times at different events. We started originally at Extra Life, and then we did it at SaltCon, including several members of Hug, Darren and Jeremy, Brian, Kyle. This is definitely something that we should try to do again and include Dave Brimmer. That'd be a lot of fun with this simple, more intimate game, because I always love my experience with Dave at SaltCon and Werewolf. I have several videos of his rebuttals to his accusations, and he's printed propaganda. I don't know if that's the word either. Yeah, sure it is.
No. It is propaganda, yeah. He created his own werewolf vaccine card. It was definitely propaganda.
Yeah, it was awesome. He always makes it very fun. That's just part of the game of werewolf, that experience, this extreme ultimate werewolf. When somebody would die, you had one of those wrist slappers that you would slap on their wrist that says RIP on it. There was a sandwich that you could throw off the werewolves. A lot of this stuff came from experience through Werewolf Legacy, and they just wrapped that all up into Ultimate Werewolf Extreme.
This is a game that is not me and Andy's favorite type of game.
Because you're no fun.
I love how much you guys and Hug and so many people that come and play with us at the cons love this game. I love the draw that it is. I love how excited everybody is to play this. And I thoroughly enjoy watching it for a few minutes and then going and playing something fun.
You miss all the fun, Dave.
That's one of the things that I love about it, though, is I love, being able to just listen to you guys from a block away laughing so hard. I know you guys are having a total blast, and I think it's amazing. I think it's super awesome. I really do.
Loudest game of werewolf I think I've ever played, an unruly game of werewolf I've ever played, was at Hug and Meeple. We were down south playing Hug's home territory where they have their husbands there. They were shouting left and right. You could not get people's attention to move the game along. It was loud. Sarah was not happy.
It was a lot of fun. Sarah got killed. That was when she was cyberbullying me because she thought I was the bad guy.
Just like Werewolf, I'm going to be talking about Clue later, but it's that type of game that spawns other games. That's where we got Salem. They have another game that's coming out, supposedly coming out. It's been in post-Kickstarter for 12 years now. Blood on the Clock Tower. But they have these other games that are from that same vein that draw that attention to where there's been a murder, social deduction, let's get people involved. What I love about Salem is that you can get to the point in the game where literally everybody at the table is a witch besides you. You come to this little realization that everyone's starting to work against you, and you're like, wow, I don't think I'm winning this game.
Well, I think it all originates from the game Mafia.
Yeah.
It's something that I played in junior high school. You'd go to a party with people's hands.
I was going to say, wow, high school must have changed a lot. Like, we didn't have hand parties when I was in high school.
You missed out. The story's going to sound even worse as I explain it too.
Oh, I can't wait.
It'd be a party, right? So you'd have lots of friends there. You'd have to turn out all the light. I remember we'd pack the windows full of pillows, try to get it as dark as possible, and then everybody in the group held hands. And then somebody was the murderer, and then they would start to pulse their hand X amount of times. Like if I pulsed my hand 5 times and I was holding Dave's hand, then Dave at that point would have to pulse his opposite hand 4 times. And then when it got to the person that their hand was only pulsed once, that meant that they died. Everybody would try to determine where that hand pulsing started. So you'd go one way or you'd go the other way. You could do it at the same time, depending on what house rules you were playing with. You know me and my love for house rules. Back then, before I really knew what the board game hobby was, that was something that it was something we'd do. Especially it was a boy-girl party, which was really cool back in junior high school. But anyways, this episode is not all about werewolf. That just seemed to be where we started. But there's a lot of games out there that deal with murder and solving murders. And werewolf just seems to be one that we gravitate to every time we come to discuss this topic. So what are some other games that you guys have played that dealt with the dark side of life?
I am a huge fan of Chronicles of Crime. Logan, when you got the big box for Chronicles of Crime, the first time I played this was at SaltCon, and I thought it was okay. I had fun. But when you got that big box and we started playing through that big box with the different eras and everything else, oh my gosh. Enjoyment level drastically increased for me. I love the app where you're looking through a room and trying to throw out all the clues and everything else. Just the way the whole game works and how you're working together to try to solve this crime, moving from place to place, talking to people. I like games that use integrated app. I know that's not what a lot of people like, but I really enjoy having the phone apps or whatever that are integrated into board games.
When it's done well, it helps the game so much.
I agree. I think it really adds to it. And Chronicles of Crime is a great example where I think it adds to the game.
Just like what you were talking about, to examine the crime scene. I don't know how you could do this game without something like that, to where you only have a minute to examine the crime scene. And you're turning the phone up, you're turning it down, you're turning it left, right, just trying to find all the clues you can, shouting out things that you notice that are different. Chronicles of Crime, they've done the app thing so well, being able to examine the room. Every new iteration that they come out with adds just a little flair to it that I think adds so much to the game.
They could have printed something off that you are looking at a piece of paper of maybe a 3-dimensional room, but it would not be the same. It would not have the same feel. Not only that, the phone shuts off. So when your time's up, your time is up. It's very easy to miss things because you're only getting just this small window in the room as you're moving the phone around almost as if you're in VR, right? And trying to see the entire room, you get that 3-dimensional feel to it, whereas on a 2-dimensional paper, you're only getting what's in your field of view from the perspective of however that picture was drawn.
To your point, this game in particular, the app is essential. Without it,
for sure. Oh, absolutely.
You couldn't do it, right? It needs it, and it makes it.
And each of the people you're talking to, each location has its own barcode that you're scanning that's going to bring up dialogue or something that is going to further your investigation, or maybe not at all. And like you say, the app it's absolutely necessary for the game to progress the way it does. I mean, yes, you probably still could have done that without the app, but it would have bogged the game down, in my opinion, and I just don't think it would have been as enjoyable as it is with the integrated app in it.
You can solve the crime and you still get a score at the end because it'll ask you weird questions. I remember one time we were solving the crime and it was asking some medicine that somebody took at some point, and it was something that we never investigated. And so it asks you at the end who did this medicine or something, and so you're supposed to scan the QR codes at the end as the answer of like who's a murderer, what was a murder weapon. But then it gives you a score out of 100. Sometimes depending on your time. Every time you scan to a new city, it takes up time in the game. Every time you interrogate a witness, it takes time. Every time you go to investigate a scene, you can add another minute, but it takes more time. At the end of the game, if you took too much time, it hurts your score. So you can have the answer, but you could still have not great score, and it gives you inspiration to try harder for the next game.
I also like the fact most of the time it's not blatantly obvious as to exactly who did what with what or whatever, right? You're kind of getting to a conclusion. We all kind of agree on it, but it's not like, oh, this is obvious.
In fact, quite often we don't all agree. We're like, well, maybe. I mean, we'll go with it, but yeah.
They've done good with the writing that there's plenty of red herrings that are pretty convincing.
And go back to your point, Andy. You played the original Chronicles of Crime as opposed to the Chronicles of Crime 1400, Chronicles of Crime 1900, and Chronicles of Crime 2400, which are all based in those time frames, right? So one's in the past, one's more current, one's in the future. The upgrades that they've done from the original Chronicles of Crime to this new one is exceptional. The first one, I had a tough time getting into. Chronicle of Crime 1400. I was more involved and more interested in that game than I was the other one. Not fully invested, I think. Still a little bit distracted by so much going on. But still, the way they did it, talk about the story-driven, well-written stories makes a huge difference. It's like the same thing with any legacy game, Descent, just any of those discovery games. The story has to be well written or else it flops.
You bring up a good point too, Nathan. Even the newer versions of the game, I think it still has the potential for players to be able to fade away in the background. If they're not active participants, it's really easy to not be an active participant.
100%. Yeah, it's easy to be a visitor to the game.
Right.
That's some of the lessons that we learned from the other time that we played. Whoever's phone we're using, we're literally passing that around to everybody so everyone has a chance to scan things and be like, oh, okay, I'm going to read what it says now. So it more forces you to reconnect to the game.
And that was our group. It's very easy for a group that has that alpha player to take control and run the game, and then for somebody else to just fade into the woodwork, which for some people that can be great. Some people that can be very enjoyable. But for me, is something I'd rather try to be involved with. The first Chronicles of Crime, it kind of fell a little flat for me. I mean, I very much liked the VR aspect, the looking through the rooms. But for me personally, the upgrades that they made with the design in 1400 were exceptional for me. Made a lackluster game a very enjoyable game for me.
I would agree completely with that sentiment.
Lucky duck, they have my number. Every Kickstarter they have, it turns out I back it even like unintentionally. Lessons that they've learned from like Chronicles of Crime 14, 24, 1900, they poured into Destinies, which I think is a great competitive D&D type experience. I thoroughly loved my time playing that game. I know it's not murder, but just I love when game companies actually learn the lessons from the previous game and apply them to the next, and good on them. They get more of my money.
We've talked about 2 games so far, and we're over halfway through our episode.
Hey, I mentioned Salem earlier,
yeah,
3.
I mean, we mentioned Blood on the Clock Tower too.
So 4. Ticks.
Yeah. One that I really have enjoyed in the past is an older game. It's out of print. It's a rare one. If you can find it, that's great. But that's Mystery of the Abbey. There's been a murder in the monastery. Trying to solve the case of, it's very Clue-esque, where you're asking other players if bearded or clean shaven, if they're fat or if they're slim.
It's kind of like Guess Who, that part of it. Everybody has a list of monks with a picture. So you can see some ways of describing them. Also, each of them come from a specific brotherhood, specific faction. So there's certain things known about all these monks. You're asking these questions kind of like you would in Guess Who.
I see that. I guess I still feel it's more closely related to Clue, but yeah, I completely get where you're coming from.
It's kind of a marriage of the two, really, when you talk about it. There's heavy Clue elements in it. There's heavy Guess Who.
Going back to that, you're solving that. But there's some fun elements. Everybody has to gather for mass every 4 turns. There's a bell that has to be moved.
Oh, that bell was my downfall. I hated it so much.
Yeah. All of us got stung by that bell. Even the person that was, I got to remember this, and still forgot it. Really enjoyed this game. It was one I tried to get my wife to play. One of the very few games that she's quit in the middle. She did not like it.
People who are fans of Clue and maybe grew up playing Clue and enjoyed it, which I was one of those. Like, I had Clue, I had Master Detective Clue, types of games where there's deduction involved. As a kid, I really enjoyed those. I just think it kind of takes those games to the next level. It's not a super complex game, but it definitely scratches that deduction itch, especially if those are the types of games that you enjoy. A game that I have not played, I've owned it for quite some time, so I'm hoping Logan will talk more on this because I know Logan has played it. Mansions of Madness.
Yeah, there's murders in that game. Mansions of Madness, especially the second edition. First edition, the one versus many, so one player, they controlled the enemy AI. Second edition that has an app. It's very Descent-ish, exploring, you're encountering the enemy, but they've done such a great job with the AI. We really just need to start a campaign. It's such a fantastic game. I always have a soft spot in my heart for horror-themed games, so Cthulhu is a easy hit because normally it's right up that alley. Mansions of Madness, it has those darker themes. It has the cultists sacrificing people and to go and investigate who's doing what, where. There's demons. It's a pretty solid game overall.
And I have, I believe, all the expansions for second edition. Many of them still in shrink because we haven't played it yet. But that is definitely one that I would love to get it to the table, start playing it.
You're talking about Mansions of Madness. There's this new game that I've picked up just recently that I'm really excited to play. Right up your alley, Logan. You're going to really like it. Bureau of investigations in Arkham and elsewhere. 1 to 8 player game. Players take a trip to the U.S. in the 1920s and tear the veil of concealing the unspeakable threats of elsewhere. As agents working for the Bureau of Investigations, you are tasked with investigating paranormal cases inspired by H.P. Lovecraft's writings. Explore Boston, Arkham, and exotic lands. Follow leads, question witnesses, find clues, and take actions to solve 5 brand new and strange cases. This is a cooperative game based on a Sherlock Holmes consulting detective system with some new twists. I think this is totally up your alley, Logan. I'm a little bit hesitant with the co-op on this. Would maybe be more beneficial as a competitive game, but I'm very intrigued in this, Logan, and I think this is going to be right up your alley.
Did mention a lot of great themes. Sherlock, mystery, murder, Cthulhu. It's kind of like when they came out with The Hunger and Vampires and Clank. I don't know how you can go wrong, really.
Yeah, and that's a murder game, right? Your vampires are out feeding or murdering the villagers.
No, that's not murdering. That's just natural order of life. The vampires are just a superior being, and that's how they survive. We are their cattle.
Okay. This is one that's going to be fun to try. It says it's best with either 1 or 2 people, so that's kind of...
It's best with 1 or 2, and it goes up to 8?
Yeah, that kind of the part that has me a little bit nervous. And I think it's going to go back to that same sort of feeling with Chronicles of Crime, where it's easy for players to fade out and not be as actively involved.
Especially with 8 players. That's exceptionally easy to fade out if you have 8 people at the table trying to throw out their opinions. Games like that, I think 4 tops is really where you should end your player count. After that, it's just too easy for people to just not say anything.
And that's why it has the time frame from 2 to 4 hours. And I think it's kind of compensating the back and forth, having Dave there to disagree with every decision that isn't his. And
he means every wrong decision, just to clarify.
Sorry, every wrong decision. Dave's not always right. I'm concerned about it. I still want to try the game for sure. Even if it's just the 4 of us, that's great. Give that a try.
Do you remember that time that you killed me? Do you remember that?
I do. Yeah.
That was awesome.
That was awesome. I love time travel games. This whole point of going back to try to eliminate another player back in time. I love that idea. We haven't played this game yet, but this is one that I'm very intrigued with. As I've moved, time and games have kind of been shuffled, lost and misplaced and resorted. This is one that has fallen in the back that I'm really, really intrigued with this game.
It definitely has an interesting theme to it.
Assassin Con, I don't think any of you have ever played this. I've only played it the one time, the first time I went to BGG. It's a group game. You're going to wear a little banner on your badge. Indicates that you're involved in the Assassin Con. You are given a name, and you go through the whole convention, and you try to find that person. And then once you find that person, then you claim their card, and then you take over who they were trying to find.
That actually sounds really cool.
So we played a game like this in high school quite often. It was just Assassin, right? My wife even played this earlier in her career at work. They had a group that would play it, basically Assassin, and you would have to try to sneak around and kill the other person you were assigned to. That's kind of cool that they made a board game out of this. That's kind of fun.
Been played at SaltCon, and I haven't played it at SaltCon, but SaltCon works out a little bit better. It's smaller con, so there's not as many people.
Not as many places to spread out to.
First time I played it at BGG-Con, no one ever found me, and I never found anybody. There was a lot of people that were doing it. It just makes the whole con, you're going around and you're looking at everybody's name badge. You're like, you see some letters that match your name, you like run up to them and are you? Oh, you're not. All right. I think the idea of this game is great. I've never played a successful game of it yet. Something that at a convention or a large work party, it allows you to interact and mingle, and it is fun.
Nothing spells fun at a work party more than pretending to kill each other.
Yeah.
Maybe this is something that we should try to play coming up at all.
That's something we could try to do. Yeah, that might be something that would be very worthwhile.
Yeah. Deception, murder in Hong Kong, social deduction. You're with a group of people. There's the murderer, the accomplice, and then there's investigators. There's a witness. Everybody has 4 evidence left behind and 4 means of murder in front of them. Murderer chooses each one. There's a player that's the forensic investigator, moderator of the game. So they're trying to get everybody to guess that combination. So the witness knows the player, but not the exact combination. Murderer and the accomplice are trying to misdirect other things on there. Ideally, when you play the game, you're looking around at the table and you're trying to pick very common items that could be applied to multiple murders. So that way I don't pick something that's too unique for my stuff that the forensic investigator can just point it really quickly and easily at me.
So you don't want to pick the only poison that's out there.
Yeah, or the only knife object.
Yeah.
Depending on who you play it with, it can be an amazing game. Claudine, when we played it at SaltCon one year, she was the best witness. She knew who the murderer was. When we played at SaltCon, we kind of have to look around the table. When you play it with a more intimate setting, it's a lot easier just to look at other people's cards while you're sitting there and you can discuss it. At SaltCon, we have larger group. What we normally do is we stand up and walk around the table so you have time to look at everybody's cards as you're walking around.
Yeah, we get a lot of weird looks when we do that. I don't think you can do it any other way with that big of a group.
Not in that setting. She was the witness, nudges some other guy and was like, those look weird, and then walks away. That guy was 100%, this is the murderer right here. He did it. These are the combinations. And so at the end of the game, the murderer and the accomplice, they have the opportunity to snuff out the witness to get off scot-free. They went after that guy. 100% he's a witness. He was way too after us. Claudine, that's all she did as witness, was just at the very beginning, just a little nudge and a, hey, look at this stuff. It's a great game. There's been times where I've played it where I was the murderer and I did not have the best accomplice. I knew from the very beginning I was going to lose the game. I spent the game trying to figure out who the accomplice was, not trying to get away.
As you guys have talked a lot about social deduction type games, and I've seen this, not that I've played a lot of social deduction games, but I've watched a lot of social deduction games being played. I'm kind of like Dave, I enjoy watching them being played more than playing them myself, but it really does depend on who you're playing with as far as the enjoyment level of the game, it seems like. If you get the right group, it seems like everybody enjoys themselves far more than the other way around. I've played Mafia before, and it was okay, but the times that I had more fun playing that, or the few times I have played other social deduction games, was when you have the right people at the table that really get into it. Like you mentioned, Dave Bremer, the people that really get into it, that's what makes it fun. Even fun to watch. It's enjoyable to watch. I don't mind being the moderator in games like that just because I get to be involved, participate in the game, but watch. I don't particularly like the deduction part of that, the social deduction part of it.
Amberly, Doug's daughter, has real-life angry feelings towards Nathan because of Salem.
If she'd just become a witch, she would have been fine.
Going back to the first thing that Nathan was talking about, where he calls it an experience game. It's the people there that create that experience that make it worth playing.
We talked a little bit about this on our last Hug of Meeple Con when we were getting together, and some of the Hug ladies were mentioning that the games you remember the most are, a lot of the games they remember the most are these social deduction games where they've had a lot of fun, and the caliber of the game because of the caliber of people that were around the table. I can totally understand that. Because, yeah, you play a lot of games that are just tabletop board games. There's games I've played that I've had a ball playing, but how many of those really stick out in my mind? Not very many.
Yeah, you're spot on. When we talk about Hug of Meeple Con, I played several games. I played Lords of Vegas, and yeah, it was a fun game. The game I remember the most is Snake Oil. It was hilarious. It was a cheap, dumb game, but it was an amazing experience. And the time before was a game of Salem. You already talked about it earlier, Logan, down in Harriman. It was that game of Werewolf that made the convention for me. And it's these games where there's the involvement and the people that you're playing with.
I'm surprised that the cops were not called when we were playing Salem at Andy's house. We were full-blown screaming at each other. Good thing your neighbors are not closer.
That's true.
When we talk about these murder games, really kind of what I gravitate to is more of these social deduction games. And there are still those escape room type games. There's the Deckscape, the Detectives, Echo series, Crimes and Capers, Exit. There's a wide variety of these murder games that are out there. We don't have a chance to talk about them all. Come back next week. We will be talking about 3 to 4 games there, depending on if everybody's here. We're glad to have you back, Logan. We hope you're here next week. Time will tell.
We'll see.
We'll be discussing some more murder games next week.
Until next time.
We'll see you at the crime scene. Hopefully you're not in the white tape.
At the ritual ceremony?
Hopefully you're not on the sacrifice table too. Yeah, that'd be bad.
Well, I mean, the easy way to not be that is if your heart's not pure. So I'm never going to worry about being sacrificed.
Depends on the elder god that you're being sacrificed to.
They still want purity, though, so I'm fine.
I think some of them just want sacrifices.
As always, we want to thank you for listening.
Check out our website. We have all sorts of cool things there. Love those blogs. Get a deeper look into the writing side of Meeple Nation.
Join our Facebook group, Meeple Nation Off Air. I look forward to seeing you there.
Follow us on Twitter, @Meeple Nation. We also have Instagram.
Under the same name. We also want to thank our sponsor, GameToppersLLC.com.
We love their product. There's so much goodness out there.
And we also want to thank Braden Detergent for our music.
We need to get some of those sound effects so you can put crickets in and stuff like that.
Like, I'm so happy that one of the episodes we record while I'm being a guest host is Dave doing the sponsorship.
This week we are discussing games that are based on solving murders as a mechanic and are now board games.
Should it be solving murders or committing murders?
We said discussing games that are based on this and are now board games. So they were games, but not board games before?
So they were games like, we didn't mean to like summon a demon and kill our friend, but now we made a board game about it? What if it's a tragic where you're solving the crime, you fall in love with a beautiful girl that committed the crime, so you don't want to send her to jail, and so you have to find a way to close the case and still be able to escape with her?
That sounds like a Hallmark special.
It might be.
Where have you been, Logan?
5-minute murder, 5-minute Mercer, 5-minute
Mercer?
the burger. 5-minute dang it. 5-minute mystery. Echo.
What was the first word of mystery?
5-minute mystery.
Murder mystery.
No, it's just
Oh,
mystery.
Oh, okay.